Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Game of Thrones video on the status of Meereen. In this video, I'll be examining what the current status of Meereen and Slaver's Bay is based off of what information we were given in the show in Season 6, and what can be inferred and implied from the show on what the current status of Meereen is. So I'm going to have to give a spoiler warning up to the end of Season 6. If you haven't seen all of Season 6, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So I saw several videos and read several comments online that seem to misunderstand what the current status of Meereen and Slaver's Bay, or the Bay of Dragons as it's now been renamed, is now that Daenerys has left for Westeros. Part of the problem is the show never goes into as much detail as the books on the political status of certain locations, and indeed in Season 6 there did seem to be some need to speed through Daenerys' storyline to get her to Westeros, and indeed towards the end they focused more on Daenerys' trip to Westeros and not so much on what she's leaving behind in Meereen. So I'd like to examine what we can infer from the show on what the current status of Meereen is. So, the scene we got in the finale that touched most on this was where Daenerys told Daario that he couldn't go with her to Westeros and wanted him to stay behind to look after Slaver's Bay, which has now been renamed the Bay of Dragons. And so I watched a video that had a curious assessment of the situation, as it claimed that it was a bad decision because Daario is a mercenary, not a leader, so to leave him behind as the leader of the city is not wise, and that the Sons of the Harpy are still out there causing mayhem, and that Daenerys is being kind of like George W. Bush by declaring mission accomplished when nothing's really been accomplished, and simply leaving Slaver's Bay to fall right back into chaos the instant she leaves. And as far as renaming Slaver's Bay the Bay of Dragons, this particular video likened it to renaming North Korea Freedom Land, which would mean absolutely nothing without the social change to back it up. And also suggested that the show needed to revisit Slaver's Bay one day to show the utter chaos that Daenerys left behind. Okay, so I'll just say it right off the bat. I disagree with every word of that and say that this video and others who would make similar assessments misunderstood what the show was trying to get across about the current status of the Bay of Dragons now that Daenerys has left. First, let me address her leaving Daario in charge. First off, this is incorrect, as Daenerys did not leave Daario in charge.
You're not going to Westeros. You're staying here with the Second Sons. There's finally peace in Meereen. You will keep the peace while the people choose their own leaders.
So that seems pretty self-explanatory. Daenerys is leaving Daario behind as a peacekeeper while the people choose their own leaders. I'm actually not sure how that statement could be misinterpreted. It's pretty straightforward. Daario isn't going to be the leader or in charge of Slaver's Bay. He will simply be around to keep the peace. Of course, the statement that Daenerys said about there finally being peace in Meereen is also important, but I'll get back to that shortly. Daenerys also says this to Daario.
Specific orders will be left for you regarding the welfare of Meereen and the Bay of Dragons.
The Bay of Dragons?
We can't call it Slaver's Bay anymore, can we?
Which of course implies she has a plan for continued welfare of not just Meereen, but all of what is now called the Bay of Dragons, which of course implies that slavery has been completely abolished for good in the whole region. So as to the statement that the Sons of the Harpy are still out there, no they're not. Again, this was never explicitly stated in the show, but one can infer from the events depicted on the show that this has been implied. First of all, after Tyrion's truce with the Masters, the Sons of the Harpy attack stopped, and Meereen was a thriving city again. And in fact, the slavers who before this time had been relying on the internal guerrilla tactics of the Sons of the Harpy had to switch to the external tactics of attacking the city themselves with outside forces. So why is that? I believe Tyrion explained this.
Meereen is strong. Commerce has returned to the markets. The people are behind you. Well, not all the people, of course. No ruler that ever lived had the support of all the people. But the rebirth of Meereen is the cause of this violence. masters cannot let Meereen succeed. Because if Meereen succeeds, a city without slavery, a city without masters. It proves that no one needs a master.
Meaning that the Sons of the Harpy movement had already been severely diminished because Meereen was prospering, and when a city is prospering, there is less discontent and less people willing to give their lives for a revolution, which is why the Masters had to rely on an attacking externally. But of course, there were still some Sons of the Harpy left who were actively participating in this attack when the Masters were attacking, and it's fair to say that they would have been going all out as they believed their side had the advantage, and we saw what happened to them. And again, the show will not spend 30 minutes showing all of the Sons of the Harpies being killed, and as I said, the show tend to pick up the pace with the Meereen plot this season because they're more concerned with getting Daenerys back to Westeros. Therefore, it's very logical to assume that this one scene was indicative of what was happening to the Harpies, an already diminished movement overall. And that scene where Daario cut off the head of the Harpy was symbolic of what they were doing to all of the Sons of the Harpy. Now, I'm not suggesting that they killed every single Harpy everywhere, but enough of them to completely destroy the Sons of the Harpy movement, which is further destroyed by the fact of Daenerys' statement in the next episode about there being peace in Meereen, which means no one has reason to take up the Harpies' cause, meaning there are no more Sons of the Harpy. And as for the region being in chaos, you might as well rename North Korea Freedom Land. Again, the fact that they renamed Slaver's Bay, the Bay of Dragons in itself, is an indicator that the region is no longer in chaos, or need I remind you,
there's finally peace in Meereen.
So I talked about how the Sons of the Harpy movement is gone. Let's move on to those who were funding them, their true leaders, the Masters. We saw them gather their forces to take Meereen, and what happened to those forces? They were obliterated by dragons. And again, scenes in the show are meant to symbolize what is happening on a larger scale, such as this scene.
Aiskezi skodo os vilivezi si morgolesi jim sidori. Jajalen tot. Vajivi kezari.
It's fair to say these weren't the only slave armies that ran away once dragons showed up and showed their true might. In fact, this is indicative of something else that was said in another storyline in this same episode.
Fear is his power.
It's his weakness too. His men don't want to fight for him, they're forced to fight for him if they feel the tide turning.
That was said about Ramsay, but it absolutely holds true to the slavers as well, as the slave armies only serve out of fear because the slavers hold all the power. They feel that power is gone, then they're gone too. And the power most certainly was gone after she easily decimated their ships with just 3 dragons, and then killed 2 out of 3 of their leaders and sent the other one back to send the message to any remaining slaver who would dare take up arms against Daenerys. To do so means certain death. Meaning that scene was also indicative that the slavers in Slaver's Bay were defeated for good once and for all, and they basically lost all of their power, which then was transferred to Daenerys, who is the one that the people fear now. So the name change of Slaver's Bay wasn't just done for the hell out of it, as that video is right. A title means nothing, but the title is just an indication of the political change that has already taken place. Now, sure, there will still exist some who wish to return Meereen to the way it once was, which is why Daario remained behind with the Second Sons, but that force is entirely diminished and will diminish even further the more Meereen prospers under its own civilian leaders who are from that region, as one of the main selling points of the Sons of the Harpy was that foreign invaders came in and took control of the region and spun it into disaster. However, that's no longer a talking point, as the foreigners are no longer in charge and the city is prospering more than it ever has under the previous regime. Just like Tyrion said, a prospering Meereen proves to the people that they don't need the slavers to prosper, which is exactly what the slavers feared in the first place. Now, as for the fear of Daenerys' dragons keeping the slavers in line and how that would be affected by Daenerys leaving, why, that's why Daario's there, so they know if the slavers rise up again, Daenerys will hear of it. And although it's not very likely she'd return all the way from Westeros to deal with them, that doesn't matter. The fear of the consequences is so great no one would dare upset it. And as I said, the power of those who would resist her has been greatly diminished and is practically non-existent. And the longer the Bay of Dragons prospers under the new arrangement, the weaker the resistance numbers will become, and eventually the fear of Daenerys' dragons will no longer be required. So Daario's peacekeeping force is just that, comparable to any peacekeeping force that is in a stable region that was once chaotic and is simply there to make sure the region remains stable, which every indication the show gave us says that it will. So based on what the show is indicating, I'd say we never see Slaver's Bay or the Bay of Dragons or Daario again for the rest of the series, as they're pretty much done with that part of the story and are moving on to Westeros and leaving that part of the story behind. And if we did see it, we wouldn't see a land in chaos, as that other video suggested, but a peaceful and prosperous place free of slavery. Now, the books are likely to handle this storyline completely different, and perhaps it will not be so easy to gain peace in Meereen, as the books have always been more complex. In fact, I think the books are going to spend a hell of a lot more time on the subject, and by the end of it, it will be extremely clear what the current status of Meereen is. The show, however, has always been more vague and always tends to rush through side storylines that aren't crucial to the main plot, which Slaver's Bay falls into, as it's obvious they want to move beyond it now. The real question I have is of Volantis, as that was also a slaver city which was involved in attacking Meereen, but it is not in Slaver's Bay. So it doesn't really follow that slavery would be eliminated there as well. But I suppose the show was indicating by killing its leader and the fact that they no longer have the support of the other cities, that they wouldn't have the will nor the means to attack Meereen again, meaning they would simply have to let it go. And without the slave trade of Slaver's Bay that was keeping the industry alive, slavery is likely to fall in that city as well, due to simple economic reasons. But that's just my guess. Again, I don't think the show is going to answer any of this at all, as it isn't really crucial to the main plot, and it's just one of those things that's implied, and they're just going to move beyond it and just forget about it. So that's the current status of Meereen. Peaceful, stable, and free of slavery, and likely to remain that way for the foreseeable future, and I doubt we will ever see it on the show again. So that's it for my video on the current status of Meereen. Be sure to check back here every week as I continue to do at least one Game of Thrones video a week. Also be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on shows like Star Trek, Mr. Robot, Dark Matter, and more, and be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.